Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude at Beyond Mystic, and welcome to today's special broadcast show. This is a brand new series here on Beyond Mystic entitled Weird Science. With me, of course, is the mad scientist himself, Mr. Ken Schwartz. You can find him at shopc60.com. Ken, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Oh, glad to be on in another episode.
I'm excited to have you on, and I'm excited. First of all, thank you for giving me your time and participating with me in this brand new series here. We're seeing more and more, I say, evidence that some of the older WebBot data reports are coming to fruition. Part of that, of course, was the degradation of the dollar, but in the context of the degradation also of the secrecy around a lot of this new technology that's been hidden, held back in many cases. And we're moving into, as Cliff High says, sci-fi world. And we're going to have these, I guess, innovation booms, for lack of better terms, and it's going to completely change our social order. So I think we're at the tip of the spear here, starting to have these conversations with you, people like you here who are hard at work making our world a better place. So first of all, thank you, Ken, for being on, and thank you everyone for joining us on the live stream today. We're going to try to use our nice words. We're still on YouTube here today, so if for some reason we're getting into some weird topics, Ken, let me know. We'll drop the YouTube feed and continue on Rumble and on X as well. Ken, first of all, I haven't had you on for maybe 3 or 4 months. The last time was a crazy big show we did with Janine, looking at the C60 and how it had helped her with her eyesight. It was a really well-received episode. I know you've been hard at work. I've seen quite a few emails between you, Cliff, and some other guys there. You're working behind the scenes on some really, really cool stuff. Where do you want to start? Do you want to start with maybe an update on what you've been up to here in the last couple of months, and then we can detail some of these projects you're working on?
Oh, okay. Well, the C60 still going along, and we could probably talk some more about that. A lot of your listeners know about that and the amazing health benefits. And actually, that's the kind of the woo science that I was involved in led me to the carbon 60. So it's a radiation protectant, and also I found it restored eyesight. So, but let's not go too much on there, because then we would be saying those words that would set somebody off in the censor zone.
Right. But, and so, what have you been up to in the last couple of months since we saw you last? What's exciting you now in this whole crazy new world of science coming out?
Well, I got the Moxy continues to grow, metal oxygen fusion, and I don't know if people know. We'll probably talk a little bit about that, but it's kind of a new type of fusion. It's like literally a billion times easier to fuse a metal with an oxygen than like deuterium with deuterium. And so it's and I didn't develop it. It was actually originally discovered in the late 1950s, early 1960s by a couple of Japanese researchers, Osawa and Kushi. I was back about almost a decade and a half ago, was able to confirm their discovery, and it's kind of grown since then.
And why is it so exciting? I heard some people talking about this could transform also the precious metals world of ours. Are we close to that yet? Is that just hyperbole, or is there a there to that technology?
No, it's actually happening.
Yeah,
and that's we could probably talk some more on that. It's a long kind of story, and that's how C60 came into it. They basically there was a lot of before we did the research, there was a lot of people that had the late doctor this and the dead professor that associated with this kind of research, and so I didn't want to end up in that category, and that's where I learned about C60, where you would it's a powerful radiation protectant. They gave it, they had I was looking for extra radiation protectant for my crew and myself, since I was responsible for them. They had families, and so I basically discovered this stuff called carbon 60, C60 for short, and they gave it to one set of rats, got the C60, and the control group, of course, didn't. And then they hit them with a fatal dose of radiation. The C60 rats lived where the control group died. And when I learned about that, I got a couple sources of C60, and our team took it during the experimentation. And of course, we're all still around, so I guess it worked for that. Right. But it was about, but I kept taking it even after the experimentation was over, because I had better mental focus, more energy. And what really caught attention was about 7 months after I'd started taking C60, I went to see my optometrist on my annual checkup. And my DRUs, or dry macular degeneration, which I'd had for a long time that was slowly progressing. You know, I'd been taking the lanthans, xanthans, and all that other stuff that you're supposed to, but it really wasn't doing it. But when I went to my optometrist this time, it had completely disappeared, and it remains completely gone today. And so that was pretty amazing. When I learned about that, I made a preparation of C60 and MCT oil. I don't know if people heard about MCT is medium chain triglycerides. It's like a distillation of coconut oil, and your liver can turn it into ketones. Really importantly, because my electrical engineer on the top, Gary Rodriguez, he had severe wet macular degeneration. Part of that was due to type 2 diabetes that he had developed. And so when you take MCTs, medium chain triglycerides, are turned by your liver into ketones, which are like flex fuel for your cells. So if your cells can't burn, glucose, they can easily burn ketones. And so that was, and then also the C60, and he took a tablespoon of that for a little over a year, and his severe wet macular degeneration completely disappeared. We used to be able to post his before and after pictures, but we can't do that anymore. But we have dozens of customers who have had similar results.
Yeah.
The key thing about C60, it's an SOD catalase mimic. It goes right into your mitochondria, and the mitochondria are like little organelles in your cells that make the ATP, the energy for your cells. They also make pregnenolone, the precursor molecule for the hormones. And so when you take C60, your mitochondria start back up, and then that gives you the cell the energy, and then the cell can heal itself.
Mm-hmm.
C60 kind of just lifts the oxidative burden that the cells are under, so the cells can do their natural thing. And as we get older, a lot of antioxidants like SOD and catalase and glutathione and CoQ10 kind of go down. It's just part of the process of getting older. So you can, like, the big four, like you can supplement for CoQ10, and you probably should, especially if you're older. By the way, I'm not a medical doctor. I can't give medical advice. I'm just kind of giving you my experience and my personal things, and as a research scientist, what I've come across. And then there's glutathione, and they really have some good liposomal or glutathione that you can absorb in the gum tissues, I guess, under tongue, whatever they call that. And but there really was nothing for superoxide dismutase and catalase in dealing with superoxide, the most damaging oxidative radical in the body, until C60 came around. It's like a mimic. It does the job of both of those in one shot. It's a very anti-inflammatory so that kind of was the one. And so any cell type in your body that has a lot of mitochondria, like nerve cells are almost 50% mitochondria by volume. I mean, they're just because, their brain's like 2% your body weight, but it uses 20% your energy. So it's just packed full of mitochondria. And then things like the hormone system, that's packed full of mitochondria. And of course, muscles, especially the heart. So all of those sort of tissues, if you take C60, it will do that. Yeah, we actually did a study, hasn't been published, on eyesight with C60 because people were telling us their cataracts had gone down. Well, we did the study, we got a PhD research scientist, we approved it with the state board. And but we found out that, the cataracts didn't really go down that much because there's almost no mitochondria in the cells in your lens in the eye. But in everybody's case, the vision improved for everyone. And it appears that was totally due to the improving the optic nerve, because the optic nerve is actually part of your brain. Literally, it's your brain's the back of your eye. So when that improved, then everything. So that's just anything to do with the brain or muscles or hormone system. C60 really helps that a lot.
Guys, if you're interested in that episode, this is a couple months ago already. This was the Janine recounting her story of taking C60 and dealing with some of the what she called at the time, what did you call them? Floaties. So she was having those little dark spots in her vision, and how it helped her clear out. So if you haven't seen that episode, please do go check it out. Now, Ken, you just mentioned something that we didn't really talk about the last time, and I want to get into tying all of this to Sci-Fi World, Moxy Fusion, and the Thunderstorm motors also here for the audience. But the mental focus part is important. Why is that? Why is the C60 having a change? Is it having something to do with going through the blood-brain barrier and the brain? Like, what's the process there in getting more of that mental clarity?
Yeah, C60, C60 has no solubility in water, so we dissolve it. It's dissolved in an oil, and then you just take it internally, or you can put it on topically. In fact, the first human study of C60 was they put C60 in a cream for face cream for Japanese women, and it was found to reduce lines and wrinkles in Japanese women. And so that's that. You can go to our website, shopc60.com, and you can get the human studies or human cell type studies. Go to shopc60.com, and that's where you can get that. But there's another website called whatisc60.org, and that has the human and animal studies, and it's like a 501c3, and we and a couple other C60 companies support that, and so you can get the animal studies there. But yeah, it goes past the gut barrier, passes the blood-brain barrier, goes right into your cells. Your cells take it in by endocytosis, and the mitochondria take it into endocytosis. So the C60 gets in that mitochondria, and it works as an SOD catalase mimic to take care of superoxide, the most damaging oxidative radical in the body, and what your mitochondria make a lot of, because your mitochondria are like little furnaces, right? And they also make in making ATP and other things for your cell, they also make a little bit of pollution, which is superoxide, the most damaging oxidative radical in the body. And when you're young, you got a lot of superoxide dismutase and catalase to take care of that. But as you get older, that kind of goes down. So when you take C60, it replaces that missing stuff. So that means the mitochondria can turn themselves back up. You're making more ATP, so now you have more ATP to run everything in your brain cells. Mm-hmm. It's like it's just like if in your car, it's getting better gas. So now you can do all the things that you used to. And that's what, in fact, I did that as a scientist. As you get older, your brain doesn't work quite as well. Yeah. And so one of the things I developed, I take like little tiny shots of C60, like a quarter of a teaspoon or something every like 15 minutes. And I can do this like over several hours, and I can actually do math like I did in my late 20s.
I remember when I started taking it, I was doing a lot of HTML programming at the time, and I remember how sluggish I felt. And then using C60 within maybe about a month or so, maybe at the offset 2 months, saw a huge difference in my ability to program and concentrate and not have to read the same line over and over again. There was a big difference there. Ken, you said you got into C60 and it got you into this Moxy fusion thing. So explain that. Like I read something maybe a month or two ago, Cliff talking about you, and you just mentioned also that this could, and it is actually revolutionizing the world of gold and silver. Can we actually make gold and silver now cheaper than we can take it out of the ground? And what does that mean? Let's get
a lot cheaper.
Science there.
Yeah, a lot cheaper. It's the inputs are under $100 to produce an ounce of gold. Now the machines cost a little bit, but not the price of those will come down. So it was I didn't actually do it. Yorio and Carrillo, they did that back in 2004. And of course, I think they'll have links up, so you can
probably bring up this one here. I'll share that with the audience members here too. Hold on, this one here, yeah.
Yeah, that's the research one. To get to. Here's and if you're looking at it, I'll probably do it here with the camera. This is it was done by Yorillo and Carrillo. There are a couple of researchers, and what they did is they basically had this cell where they had tungsten electrodes, and then they just blasted it. And it's and then and the end here, this is for those people, it's kind of, if you're not a scientist, what you can see is that all these new elements came into being, and one of them being gold. But there's also like beryllium, which shows that there's been a breakdown of a fission fusion thing. And basically you take oxygen, it combines with the tungsten. And in I think tungsten has 6 different isotopes. So some of them go on to produce gold. Others make, I believe, rhenium and some osmium, and which are also rare earth or precious, semi-precious metals, I guess. And then also it's in some cases, some isotopes, they break apart. So the tungsten breaks, kind of shatters, and part of it becomes beryllium. Beryllium's only produced in fission reactions. So that proves that there's fission going on. But then you get thulium, which is a rare earth metal. And what's really great about this is now, like, usually rare earths have the same outer electron. I'm getting a little sciencey on you folks. And so it's really, europium or thulium or osmium or all of these different rare earth metals. It's really hard to separate. But with Moxy fusion, usually what happens is you'll just produce one rare earth metal, which is easy to separate. And so it just allows, And basically the input costs are this under $100 in electricity and the inputs. Now the machines are cost a little bit, but
Well, what are
that
you talking about in terms of the machine, the work, the infrastructure? Like, can anybody do this in the garage and start producing gold?
actually anybody can do this in the garage, and there are people doing that. There's also several nations, well, actually almost a dozen nations doing research about this right now. Kind of a hot thing, but a lot of people aren't talking about it, because if you were successful, let's say in Asia somewhere, there's somebody, a group of people that are like successfully, synthesizing kilograms of gold every week. They have no encouragement, of course, to tell anyone.
No,
So
wow.
that's kind of one of those things, I guess.
Now, is the input different? I read something in the paper a couple of months ago that for some reason it was a little bit more complicated for silver. Why is that? Why is
Oh
it
no,
easier?
it's just harder as you go down on the atomic level to go from lowers. It's easier and easier to Moxy fusion. So something like tungsten is much easier, and which then produces gold. But if you went up another level, that's where silver is going to be like a third atomic level. That's harder. So it tends to be, as you go harder. I mean, with the actinides like uranium and thorium, they have a thing where you do Moxy fusion fission, and you can literally fuse oxygen with the uranium, and it breaks down into copper and tin isotopes in a short-term radioactive gas, which the late Dr. Bass didn't know about, which is why he's the late Dr. Bass. And so it was really easy, incredibly easy to do. And you can actually harvest the instead of like our nuclear reactors only use uranium-235,
Right.
which is like 0.6% of uranium. With Moxy fusion, you can harvest all the energy out of uranium. So you can use the uranium-238, or you can use thorium or plutonium or neptunium or anything. You just throw it all in there, you cook it out, and what's really great is that the end products are not radioactive.
Right.
They're non-radioactive, so it's actually really great at cleaning up radioactive waste. So you can throw the radioactive cesium in there and other plutonium or whatever, and you just Moxy fusion it, and it breaks down into useful metals, and usually a short-term radioactive gas like xenon, which then decays into something else that's not radioactive. And so you don't have, like with a Moxy fission fusion reactor, you wouldn't have to worry about a meltdown, because everything goes into non-radioactive elements.
I was looking at Google patents just before the show for metal oxygen fusion reactors here, 2016. Is that about right? And what does it mean? Like, what does it mean for, like, what are the applications readily available where this is being used, and how this can change our manufacturing process, or ability to source materials for a manufacturing process, and getting into maybe new types of metals, whether that's for propulsion, for shipping, for airline industries. Like, where do you see this going right now? What seems to be the direction that the science community is taking with this?
Well, right now, I originally used it. The original guys, you can make, what's really good is there's monoisotopic metals. Like, for instance, with metals, like gold is the only monoisotopic metal. It always has an atomic weight of 179, whereas most metals have 5 or 6 isotopes. So if you're using any quantum circuits or anything like that, if you have like 2 isotopes of metal in that circuit, you're going to get like 4 times the or more kind of dissipation or detuning. So that's why gold's so valuable, because it's monoisotopic. But with Moxy fusion, when you do synthesize these new metals, a lot of those metals are monoisotopic, because it's really hard to separate. I mean, they have a whole process. The people are trying to separate 235 from 238 in uranium, and they have to have all these centrifuges and all that kind of stuff. Well, it's the same way it's even harder with a lot of metals, to separate like the 4 or 5 different isotopes of tungsten or iron or whatever it is. And but with Moxy fusion, a lot of times you can make a particular metal, but it's only one isotope of that metal. And that way, because I mean, there's a thing where they get, like, a lot of lead has certain radioactive isotopes still in it. And they'll actually pay 10 times as much for lead that, let's say, comes from Roman shipwrecks, because that lead was refined years ago, and then it's all the radioactive isotopes of that lead have gone away, and now they use it for shielding of scientific instruments. So you can actually, if you get lead from an old Roman shipwreck, you can sell it for 10 times as much as like lead that's made out of a foundry today. And so,
Well, while you mentioned that too, my buddy Joe, he's a treasure hunter, and somebody was talking about some of this older gold that's being found in New Mexico, other places. There's a lot of rumors. Some of it has already been found. Some of it is still to be found. But they were suggesting that there's a way to determine how old that gold was. Does that relate to what the process you're describing now too?
It
Like,
might be. It
yeah,
might be. There's. I'm not sure. There could be like contaminants in the gold slightly, and you can do that. And yeah, that's because sometimes there's there's a little bit of radioactivity in a lot of things, and so if there was a decay over time, you could probably tell that.
well,
The original thing I got to go to the story of Moxy fusion. It was really originally discovered by these two guys, Osawa and Kushi, a couple of Japanese researchers in the late 1950s.
yeah,
And what they did is they basically made this. They made basically a sodium street lamp, which was kind of interesting. And what they did is they let me grab this. They basically, if we go up here, what they basically did is they just took sodium and oxygen and they put it in this street lamp. Basically, they took a sodium street lamp power supply. They created their own special bulb. It only had like a small quartz window because it's going to get really hot when you get fusion. And then and they put it in there, and they also pressurized it with argon. And so what they did is after a few hours, it turned from like the yellow sodium street lamp that we all know, right,
yeah.
into purple, and that's what potassium looks like. Potassium is in the same atomic family as sodium, so it went from a sodium street lamp to a potassium street lamp. And basically, they put in a pressurized argon atmosphere, an equal amount of sodium and oxygen, and over time, the sodium and oxygen fused to make potassium. What we did in our experimentation, which has also been third-party verified, is we took deuterium, which is an isotope of oxygen, of hydrogen, which has a proton and a neutron. We fused it with oxygen. It made fluoride 18, which breaks down through electron capture into oxygen 18. And we used a multi-band spectral analyzer. It had like 50 channels, so we could actually see the different fusion going on. And unfortunately, like you remember that those cold fusion guys,
Yeah.
Fleischmann, and he's passed away. Because what they were doing is they were using platinum palladium. Well, what they were actually doing, they weren't fusing deuterium. Platinum was fusing with the oxygen to make radon, and then that radon was venting into the laboratory because of the electrolytic cell, right? So it's venting into the laboratory cell. If they use palladium, it makes radioactive xenon. So they were like in hundreds of times the worst radon basin that you could imagine,
Right.
which is why it's a late Dr. Fleischmann.
Right.
And also C60 makes or when you do Moxy fusion, it lowers the Coulomb barrier. That means the energy to fuse things together. So instead of putting out in the gamma rays, it puts out in the X-ray band. And so a lot of these scientists, that's why there's a late doctor this and a dead professor that, because they're walking around with a Geiger counter, which could only detect gamma rays. In all the meantime, they were really cooking themselves with X-rays. And that's
the risk of science.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, it's still happening. Yeah. We thought we'd learn something, but no, that's what I figured was happening. So, and we can, so we had a bunch of X-ray plates and X-ray film, and we also had the multi-band spectral analyzer. But that would show, that's because we figured it was happening, which is why a good thing we took C60 because it's radiation protected. Absolutely. But of course, we kind of knew we figured it out beforehand, and we just confirmed that. Right. But yeah, the Osawa and Kushi, they did that in the early 1960s, and they did confirming evidence. It was just really solid. But because Japan was under occupation at the time, and it was a threat to existing power structures, basically the U.S. was putting in atomic reactors into Japan, right? And those kind that melted down in Fukushima, and that was competition. So Osawa and Kushi basically got crushed.
And we talked about the application here of creating metals in a lab as opposed to mining them, which already sounds absolutely crazy and has huge ramifications. But let's talk about the creation of energy and sustainability. In this movie, Chain Reaction, I don't know if you saw it, it was Keanu Reeves and Morgan Freeman. They're talking about fusion here and how it could change the world. And of course, this whole power play dynamic of the spy world trying to prevent them from unlocking the secrets. But with Moxy fusion, can we get to some type of generator for our home? Like, are we seeing a roadmap to where we could use this for power generation as well? or not yet?
Yes, because you probably because that's what we did. That's why we used deuterium and with the oxygen, because that's the most energy releasing. And believe me, I mean, we didn't do total colorimetrics, but when we were doing the testing for third-party verification stuff, we had to literally we had that thing when we had it not running, just basically electric spark going on there. Everything was not in there, usually argon, or just the argon by itself without the deuterium heavy water vapor. It would just run all the time. But when we turned it on, it would just get so hot within 30 seconds to a minute. It would get so hot in there, the air would get too thin. So we literally had to pack it in buckets of ice to keep it running. So it was producing a whole lot. And we were running that thing off a couple of small 12-volt batteries, by the way. Wow. And so the amount of heat coming out of it was well in excess of what the energy we were coming out of the battery. So yeah, it's energy positive. And after I was giving a speech one time, and by the way, there was another group called the, because that patent you saw in 2016, that was our first application. We've had to go through, we're still doing it, right? We send it in, they send it back, we send it in, right. But now it's being done. But this is another one that's probably a link up there, and it just says experiments demonstrating the creation of elements via pulsed electric field in water and deuterionated water applications and for the production of fluoride. So we posted our stuff. We did the kind of the Stephen Greer thing, because a lot of people that are involved in this, they come to bad ends. Right. So we just open sourced everything. Yep. We put the paper out, we open sourced it, it's been downloaded tens of thousands of times. So it's just everywhere out there. There's no, we're not keeping little secrets and trying to run it. And they actually took our information and redid our experiment, except this time they use a glass bead detector. And so when they're fusing it, it actually creates anything like fluoride comes out in the glass bead detector. It tells you they've detected fluoride. So they basically, they had deuterium and oxygen in the pressurized argon atmosphere inside their little reactor chamber. And then they have a bleed coming out of material. And when they weren't running it, there was no fluoride. They turned the reactor on, and fluoride was produced, which is, third-party confirmation completely. And that they can actually do this Moxy fusion. It's not like the quote cold fusion people where they do this, oh look, it's making extra heat, which was actually Moxy fusion. They didn't understand it. Moxy fusion is easily done. It's easily reproduced. Anybody can do that in the lab. Basically, especially. So anyway, remember the water car.
Yeah.
Back in the day, what was his name again? They had they had that water car that Stanley Meyer. Remember Stanley Meyer? Yes. And he came to a bad end in a Cracker Barrel parking lot. He said he'd been poisoned. He met these people, quote, from NATO, and then he jumped up and said, the poison run out in the parking lot and died. And so I had been giving a talk on Moxy fusion, and some guy came up to me afterwards and actually was working with Stanley Meyer during the time. Now, Stanley Meyer put in patents, but he never put all the information in. He'd always keep things out. And when Stanley Meyer's dune buggy had a flathead VW engine, and it's a dune buggy. It does about 10 atmospheres pressure. When his thing was running, it was actually over Unity. They had scientists confirm it, but he didn't tell them exactly what was going on. Well, this guy worked with Stanley at the time, and when Stanley did it, Stanley always said, "Oh, you should get your water from ocean, right? Because it has more deuterium in it." When he ran his over Unity car, it ran off pure heavy water, deuterium oxide.
Oh, okay.
And the non-combusting gas was argon, which is exactly what a Moxy fusion reactor is. So Stanley basically turned an internal combustion engine into a Moxy fusion reactor and made it over Unity. And as the car stayed over Unity as long as the argon.
How far are we from a commercial production of that?
Hopefully, maybe by the end of this year. There'll be commercial, if it goes well, there'll be commercial things where you can, because basically what you just do is you take a combustion engine. Yeah. You could use Stanley Meyer's thing, and you take the exhaust comes out, because when the argon runs out, but it's running off, you basically break the oxygen and the deuterium apart, and then you inject it into the cylinder where it recombines and causes combustion. Now, if it's a regular hydrogen, you're not going to get much, but when the average hydrogen oxygen burn is like 9 electron volts. When you do a Moxy fusion, it's like 70,000 electron volts. So you don't need very many Moxy fusion reactions per thing. And so basically all you have to do is just basically Stanley Meyer car, put it in a condenser where the deuterium water condenses, goes back into a water form, heavy water, which you can re-inject into the injectors, and then feed the argon back up into the air intake, and then attach an electrical generator to it, and you've got an over unity Mach fusion reactor for generating electrical energy.
Are people doing these in their garage right now? Like, does this involve retrofitting?
Yeah, there's some people doing experiments with industry on that. Some people are using Moxy fusion to fuse metals in their garages right now, but there's actually industry developing Moxy fusion reactors, basically using internal combustion engines and the Stanley Meyer technique.
Wow.
And if we're lucky, maybe we'll have something by the end of the year that's commercially viable you could buy.
And is this a question of retrofitting current engines, or you're talking a whole engine swap here for vehicles?
No, you could do basically it was just the general standard electrical generator setup.
Yeah.
Just basically you have to put in new fuel injectors.
Okay.
And then you have to put a condenser unit on it to so that the argon gas goes back through. And you have to have like a 20% argon, or 80% argon, about 20% oxygen, like our atmosphere. And then you do the deuterium oxide injection. Yeah, they're doing it. They're working on making working models for it. And and the fact is, I didn't come up with this. Sure, I'm fighting for the American patent, but all the other patents that are happening around the world, well, that's just what's going on. But like you can also, and so that's kind of stuff that's going on. So maybe by the end of the year, we'll have some over unity fusion reactors that you can buy where they're basically turned, internal combustion engines into a fusion reactor. It's, and it doesn't cost billions of dollars, right? People could do this in the garage. And we have people, synthesizing metals in their garage.
Wow.
It's to a certain, you basically just have to have it's pretty simple, if you were to do it. I think I talked about this on another show. And basically, you remember David Hudson with the monoatomic elements?
No.
Okay, well, that's basically all you do is you have a pressurized cell that has argon gas, about 10 atmospheres, 5 to 10 atmospheres. You got a little graphite crucible. You put the metal oxide in it. You have a cathode, which electrons, zap into the metal oxide. You got an anode because graphite is conducted, so you basically just zap the metal oxide a whole bunch of times, and it'll turn into whatever it is. Like if you do zirconium oxide, which zirconium hafnium oxide, which is 50 cents a pound, you'll produce the entire band of platinum group metals. That's platinum, iridium, palladium, rhodium, ruthenium, osmium, all of that thing from that.
Fascinating stuff. You're breaking up a little bit here. I think we have a bad connection.
There we go. Somebody doesn't want us talking, maybe.
It's a form of censorship. Let's get into this thunderstorm machine and vortex cannons you've been working on also. What do you mean by that? What's the application there, and how is this science developing here? Well, there's this guy, he says he's making a vortex cannon that produces rain. And I don't know, it's actually kind of interesting because Moxy fusion does that. It actually make little solitons, which are smoke rings of electrons. And that's actually the secret. Well, he's making smoke rings. He has a electrical discharge, and he creates like a copper ion water vapor kind of smoke ring. Because I had an uncle who he had P-51 Mustangs, and he used to fly through thunderstorms in like above Napa Valley, where all the wine is, and they'd, because P-51 is pretty strong, right? And they'd fly through and they'd dump silver iodine crystals, and that would cut the thunderstorm in half, so it wouldn't like have hail and destroy the grape crop. Well, the thunderstorm machine, what the guy's making is like smoke rings, basically. You've seen like vortex cannons, and they fire off that smoke ring. Well, he's basically firing off he produces like a vortex, a smoke ring of copper ions and water. And then those copper ions, of course, because the smoke ring rises
this is what we're theorizing, rises in the air, and it provides seed crystals for water to condense on, which is the same. You've heard of like Abu Dhabi out there in the Middle East, and they've had those big floods.
Yeah, we were reporting on that last month. Yeah,
yeah, those guys are. What they're doing is they're making a lot of ions, in some cases metal ions, and they get those ions up into the atmosphere up there, and then those ions are spots where water can condense on. And then if you get a lot of water condensing on these ions, of course, that makes clouds. And if you get enough of them, you get thunderstorms. And in the case of Abu Dhabi, they had like gigantic floods that got a little out of control there.
Let's go back to these vortex cannons. I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, I was going down this rabbit hole of some of the theories and concepts and inventions from Wilhelm Reich. There was one thing that he was working on too, that was this kind of weird cloudbuster cannon. Is there some type of relationship between these two technologies? Do you remember?
I mean, they both make thunder. I'm actually, I work with Trevor James Constable in etheric rain engineering. Wilhelm Reich worked with William McCullen, and then Wilhelm Reich passed away. Then William McCullen worked with Trevor James Constable. And if you go etheric rain engineering by Trevor James Constable, you can like punch that up on YouTube. And actually, Trevor James Constable taught me about etheric rain engineering. That's why Colorado hasn't had really any droughts since 2011. So I can manage the state, but I can't, do the country. It would take a bunch of people to do that. But yeah, so it's etheric rain engineering. It's like Trevor James Constable. There's like this flow of etheric energy around the planet. That's what he would call it. Some people call it prana chi or whatever. And that's really what runs the weather system. And so you can interact with that. I mean, there's like hours of his stuff on YouTube that you can study. And,
wow.
Wilhelm Reich made like a giant machine that was rather effective. I think we have one that's semi-disassembled in the mountains up here. But the modern things that Trevor James Constable came up, I can do the same job with a machine that I can hold up with my pinky finger.
Now, okay. So they put this guy in jail. They burned all his books. Bad things come to people who invent this. Where are we on that spectrum now of all of this breaking out to where, like you say, maybe people can do this in their garage and it's just overwhelming the system in trying to keep these innovations from coming to the forefront? Are we close to that time period now?
That's pretty much what's happening now. I mean, if you can synthesize, at least the inputs are $100 or less for synthesizing gold. Probably costs a lot more for silver because it takes more energy and stuff. But for the platinum group metals, you can use deuterium, or you can use zirconium hafnium oxide. You can buy from China for 50 cents a pound. It's a powder, and you get the platinum group metals. And argon you can buy at your local air store, and then you have to make, of course, the crucible. But you can just go to the paper. You can download my paper and read it, and then you can go to the references of my paper and go to Osawa and what Osawa and Kushi did, and all these other people what they did, and just all I did was basically redo what Osawa and Kushi did, and confirm their discoveries. And there's also another guy, Ken Shoulders, who was Dr. Ken Shoulders. He was a late Dr. Ken Shoulders. He was one that kind of confirmed it. Because what he would do is he would make solitons, which are like little smoke rings, a vortex cannon of electrons. And so like little smoke rings, and he'd fire them across a vacuum. We, of course, fire them through an argon atmosphere. And then he would hit like metal plates and then punch little holes in it. And nothing would happen if it was like a pure aluminum plate. But one day he put in an aluminum plate that had been sitting out and had a heavy oxide layer on it. And then when he looked at the impacts, he discovered the creation of new elements, is the kind of elements you would likely find if aluminum fused with oxygen.
Wow.
And so that's kind of where metal oxygen fusion, that was like the confirmation. Of course, Osawa and Kushi were doing it with sodium and oxygen turning into potassium in the late 1950s and early 1960s. And then Ken Shoulders showed that same thing happening with aluminum oxides. When it was a pure metal.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
When it was a pure metal, it never did that. But when you had a metal and an oxide, that's what it has. So you can fuse those two. And it just seems to be, that's why we call it Moxy, metal oxygen fusion.
Are you seeing venture capitalists now starting to get into this in big industry, or it's still kind of like, no, if you're not part of the boys club here, we're not investing in this, and really it's still relegated to the garage people, doing their investments, inventions in their basements? What's going on? Are you
Oh,
seeing any flow into this or no?
no, it hasn't even hit their level of awareness.
Huh.
Like
Wow.
C60, C60 is, first it was just in the woo-woo crowd,
Yeah.
and then it got into the biohackers. Now it's going into functional medicine crowd.
Yeah.
But for the average doctor, they have no clue about it. They just don't know anything about it. And so,
I
and
just went to do some blood work last month. I'm looking at doing some longevity work basically,
Mhm.
and tracking my blood and a couple of different markers here on how to be here a little bit longer for my kids, basically.
Oh yeah,
And
I
so
mean,
I filled out the intake form of everything I was doing, C60 being one of them. And my naturopath was like, "What is that?" I'm like, "Oh, let me educate you." So I sent him the
yeah,
link to this. He
they,
says,
they
"Fuck, this
just
is fascinating." He had
they
no
just
idea
don't
what we were
know.
talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because the key thing with C60, the C60 was discovered in 1985, solved a mystery in astronomy.
Yeah.
It got a Nobel Prize in chemistry in 1996, but it was in the early 2000s until it was really being tested. And like one of the famous tests is the Botry study, which we have which is the prolongation of lifespan of rats by repeated oral administrations of C60 fullerene. And basically, they use Wistar rats, and they found that it increased the lifespan of Wistar rats by 90%.
Right.
Now, Wistar rats are kind of wimpy rats, right? Usually they
Yeah,
die
they're
of,
designed to live only a small period of
yeah,
time.
exactly. Usually they die of cancers or degenerative diseases
Yeah.
associated with aging in humans and
Yeah.
rats. And so
Yeah.
they're kind of like and so that's, so they got a 90 percent increase in now, but they're kind of wimpy rats. Now they did another study. The problem was like the study went for 5.5 years, right? Because all the control rats died, and then the rats that were just got the olive oil died, and they stopped giving C60 to the C60 rats, but they kept living. They would not die. In fact, it's rumored the last couple of rats had a terrible accident. 5.5 years.
You just needed to close down the study, Ken.
Yes, exactly. They had to perish to publish. But then they did another
Yeah.
study, which is we have a little handout we always give out at conferences we're at, and this is the carboxyfullerene SOD mimic improves cognition, extends the lifespan of mice. In this time, they actually use wild type mice, which is more realistic, and they found that it not only it completely prevented cognitive decline during aging. So you just doesn't C60 doesn't increase your lifespan; it increases your health span. So
Right.
these mice had they put the mice in a little water maze where they had to swim, to
Yeah.
stay alive, and so their cognitive abilities stayed perfect all the way through their aging process, and it increased their lifespan 11%.
Wow.
So your lifespan doesn't just increase your health span. So
Right.
you're cognitive. You don't get Wistar rats usually die of cancers. There were no cancers among the C60 Wistar rats, and
Did you
so
see last week there was another study that came out? They're talking about these paraffins and all these like chemicals that are being used in deodorant and hairspray, how that's causing Alzheimer's and all this stuff.
oh yeah.
Where does C60 tie into all that? Maybe as a remedy or as a tool to maybe diminish some of those ill effects from those products? How does that work?
Well, the number one thing, of course, is to avoid those. What C60 is a powerful antioxidant. It
Hmm.
takes care of superoxide and the hydroxyl ion. Hydroxyl ion, by the way, is the main oxidative radical produced by radiation. That's why it's so radiation protective. So what it does, it can protect your a lot of these chemicals that break down. Like they had one during the Botry study because it was going for 5.5 years. They did a minor study in it, and they basically gave they had C60 rats and they had the control group, and they gave them carbon tetrachloride, which is just a terrible, terrible chemical. And the
Hmm.
C60 rats, their livers were undamaged by carbon tetrachloride, whereas the control group, of course, their livers were completely destroyed.
Hmm.
And so C60 can help you protect against toxic chemicals in the environment, because it's not the toxic chemicals. As that toxic chemical breaks down, it produces huge amounts of oxidative radicals, and it's those oxidative radicals that do the damage. And
Hmm.
so C60, yes, that's true. Biden doesn't use it, but let's hope he doesn't find out about it either. Uh, and uh, and
Right.
so that's kind of protects them there. And so a lot of that,
He might have to use it to have a mental clarity for the next
yes,
debate coming up with
yes,
Trump.
yeah, that's about the only thing that could help him now, and he'd have to use buckets of it.
I had a
But
few questions from the audience here before the show. People were asking also, like, how long does C60 live in the body when you start taking this product? What's the lifespan inside of you here?
Oh, it's about somewhere. It's two scientific studies. It's somewhere between 4 to 10 days. It's
Okay.
half. So
Okay.
because C60 doesn't make any permanent chemical bonds, it's a very solid molecule. It's a 60 carbon atom shaped like a little soccer ball. I think I should have had my model here. Oops.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't make any permanent chemical bonds. So it kind of washes out somewhere between 4 to 10 days. And so you have to renew it. But it just doesn't. Yeah. And so it doesn't build up in the body at all. And that's, which is a good thing. Well, and
Right.
so that's kind of does, and it goes right into the mitochondria. It takes its time, and then, but it just kind of hangs out, just kind of like just washes out because there's nothing really holding it in.
Right.
You can't make chemical bonds in the body
Right.
that are permanent, and so usually goes out either in the urine or out the bile ducts of the liver.
We've
And,
talked about mental clarity. We've talked about the regeneration here of some of the eyesight issues. You talked about the health crowd. I remember a couple of studies and where bodybuilders were taking this too.
Oh, yeah.
The repair time. Like, what can people expect? Like, if they've never touched C60 before, if they start on it, what can they expect if they start to use it on a regular basis? Like, what are the first signs?
Okay, first week or two, you're going to get better mental clarity and more energy. That's going to be usually, that's what people usually know. And also, it also has been known C60 appears to shed like sometimes if you've got a lot of mouth metal, mercury, you'll get like a little mercury taste, because what C60 will turn mercury hydroxide and other metal hydroxides into oxides that the body can eliminate. So people that take C60 have unusually low levels of mercury and tantalum and other +2 type things. So that's one thing. But then, you'll kick in and you'll get the more energy, better mental clarity. Now, another thing that C60 does is because it starts your mitochondria up, your mitochondria also make pregnenolone, which is the precursor molecule for all the things. So the other big thing, you'll notice this about 3 weeks, 4 weeks, is there's going to be a huge increase in libido. And that's basically because C60 will restart, because in your hormones, the cells in your hormones, like your pineal gland, produce more melatonin. Your hypothalamus, pituitary complex, more human growth hormone, and the other master hormones. And your adrenals will produce, more androgens, which your body turns into testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, depending on who you are. And also cortisol will go up if you need it. But the other thing, also another mineral corticoids go up, because like my friend Gary Rodriguez, not only did his type 2 diabetes not only does wet macular degeneration go completely away. We used to be able to post those. In fact, there's some seminars. We had a webinar online, little conference, and we could show that stuff there. But his type 2 diabetes went subclinical. And that's because the mineral corticoids are produced. And this is actually one of the ways that things what you need to do a warning on it. If you're on a blood thinner and you take C60, please consult with your physician before you do that, because one of the things C60 does, C60 will restart mineral corticoid production in your adrenal glands, and mineral corticoids regulate your, quote, blood thickness. And so if you're on a blood thinner, the underlying problem which caused your blood to be, quote, thick goes away. And now if you're on a blood thinner, your blood can become too. And to a certain extent, it's the same with hormone therapy, but it takes a little longer. Like typical case, we've had lots of this happen. We had a 70-year-old, he goes into his doctor and his testosterone's 350, which is pretty low. So the doctor gives him creams and his testosterone's like in the low 700s. He takes C60, goes in 3 months later to see his doctor, and his testosterone's now 1200.
Wow.
So you'll see you'll see a huge increase in libido, but also for bodybuilders, testosterone's the key thing to help build your muscles.
Absolutely.
And so when bodybuilders take C60, it's that gets them to get more muscle mass quicker, and also it suppresses, because it's an antioxidant, it takes care of superoxide, which your mitochondria, when you're working your muscles, you're making a lot of ATP, a lot of superoxide. So it'll slow the buildup of lactic acid, so you can run faster, do more reps, lift more weight.
How about dealing with the inflammation also?
Oh, it's incredible with inflammation. That's one of its best things. So it's one of the things.
That's one of the things that for some people create more cortisol levels because of the inflammation. So if you can get the inflammation down, your body can recover a lot faster. Wow.
And that's a discovery. They found that, C60 is great at inflammation because there's neutrophils, which are a type of white blood cell. They actually use superoxide as like machine gun bullets to take out bacteria.
Yeah.
But if you've got autoimmune things, well, then it's like collateral damage. And so they did a study where they had rabbits, and they gave rabbits arthritis in their joints. And then they injected C60 into the joints, and of course the inflammation went down, which is not surprising. That's what expected. So it's really effective at that. But when they sacrificed the rabbits and looked at the joints, they found that the cartilage had regrown. And this is the other thing that you're going to get with C60 after 3 to 6 months, is they found that C60, there are senescent cells in your body, and they're like zombie cells. They've gone out of the oxygen burning and they've gone into fermentation, and they're like poisoning the cells around them, and they're draining energy because fermentation's like 1/20th as efficient as oxygen burning. And they should have, usually their body has ways of wiping out senescent cells, but sometimes they just hang around too long. They're like zombie cells, just poisoning the body and draining it. Well, when you take C60 goes into senescent cells and restarts their mitochondria back into the Krebs cycle, the oxygen burning. And then those mitochondria will send messages to the nuclear DNA, and the nuclear DNA in senescent cells is damaged, right? So they won't get the right message back, and then the mitochondria will basically blow themselves up and cause apoptosis, and cause wipes out all those senescent cells in your body. Yeah. And then that causes a huge increase in stem cells. And that's why they found the cartilage regrew in those rabbits' joints, is because C60 had wiped out all the senescent cells in the body, or a big part of it, and it created a huge increase in stem cells. And then those stem cells, of course, can be turned into any tissue type. Right. And so that's like that. And then so that's why the cartilage regrew in the joints. And like in the Japanese women where they put the facial cream on, what was actually happening, there was now more stem cells in their skin. So when their skin turned over, there were more cells. So the wrinkles and lines went away. Yeah. And so that's the other thing, that C60 creates a huge increase in stem cells. So we have a lot of surgeons, and especially plastic surgeons, who like to have their people get on C60 before, 3 to 6 months before they do surgery, because you have a huge increase in stem cells in your body. And then, and so when you do healing from surgery, it's so much quicker because you have all these stem cells. But that does everything. I mean, we've had things where we had a lady had kidney failure, 30% loss of nephrons. Her nephrologist told it's only getting worse until she needs a transplant. She took C60, 6 months later, she goes back for her checkup, and, she has 100% kidney function. And basically we've had people that had Hashimoto's, zero function. And, after a while, it goes like they get off a quarter of their medicine, then a third of their medicine, then a half of their medicine. Some people have got totally off because what's happening is, you have damaged cells in there. The C60 is causing those senescent cells to basically self-destruct and go away. And now they're being replaced with stem cells, which are fully functional. And so you get this amazing, I've had amazing, I used to race motorbikes a little bit, and I had some sort of injuries when I missed the track anyway and ran into things. And so it's really done great for like nerve healing and a lot of other things, that's just.
There's a big industry growing also for longevity. We're seeing more and more clinics pop up. They're using all the algorithms to take in all their data from your MRI, your blood works and all that, to try to help you beat that aging curve. A big part of that is the telomeres and the lengthening of telomeres. There's some people suggest there's natural ways to get to that. Some other people are looking at other options. Where does C60 fall in? Do you have any studies right now touching telomeres?
No, we have anecdotal things from people that have been using it. And actually C60 does increase telomere length over long-term use. But what's happening is when you do a telomere swab in your mouth, right, you're getting thousands of cells, tens of thousands of cells. And then they just take the average telomere length. When you take C60, senescent cells, which always have shortened telomeres, right, they get wiped out and they're replaced with stem cells, which have a full set of telomeres. And so average telomere length after several years of using C60 increases. But the average telomere length in a cell isn't going to increase. Now, and I want to say one thing, C60 is not the magic pill. C60 is just one tool in the toolkit for better health. Look, if you have to have proper nutrition, you've got to get the right sleep. You've got to do mineral supplementation, for vitamins and minerals because our diet's so bad. Get the exercise. You have to do all of those things. Yeah. If C60 was an analogy of a car, C60 would be like the radiator fluid, right? If you keep your car cool, everything runs great, the engine doesn't overheat. but you still need, the gasoline. You still need the motor oil. You still need the air in the tires. You still need the windshield wiper stuff. You've got to do all of that stuff. If you're not going to do all those other things, C60 or anything else probably isn't going to help you. It's not a magic pill. It's just one tool in the toolkit for better health. And if you're on that pathway, then it can help you. But, with that, you can't get away. You got to do the exercise. You got to do the right diet. You've got to do, and the older you get, the more you have to do that stuff. Because, when you're in 20s, C60 probably not, going to be a big deal for you. But, it's the gray hair crowd. That's where, the benefits of C60 really stand out because, you wake up in the morning, that. And so,
so you just mentioned getting good sleep. People were asking in the chat, hey, where's that Pure Sleep? Guys, if you go to beyondmystic.net/shop, you'll see here the link for Cliffi's Pure Sleep and also the links here for C60. Now, Ken, the last time you and I did the show, you guys sold out of these gummies within 24 hours, and people were like, come on, JC, what are you doing?
We have plenty now. We have plenty of gummies, yes, and we can do it now. They just worked hard and got some more out. So yeah, it was only a short delay. But so no, we have it takes, because when you make a gummy, you have to like mix it and then you put it in there and it has to like cure for like about 3 days, right? Before you package it. And so it's just not quick as other things. But no, we have plenty of gummies now, so we won't run out. And that's really a nice thing to do is the gummies, because usually we have C60 in oils because C60 has no solubility in water, so we suspend in oils. And by the way, one of the other things about ours, differentiation is it's a type of C60 you use, right? We use sublimated C60. And for those people sleeping in chemistry class in high school, sublimation is when a solid turns into a gas and back into a solid, just like distillation, right? For things. And so we use sublimated C60, which has never been exposed to solvents. A lot of C60 out there is industrial C60 because there's industrial uses for C60, and they use methylbenzene to purify it. And methylbenzene is also known as toluene, is a known carcinogen. It's a benzene, right? It's something you don't want in your diet. So you want to, if you have, and we're not the only C60 company out there that has sublimated C60, but always look for sublimated C60. Ours is 99.99%.
You get what you pay for.
And also on our in our things and on our boxes or inside the boxes, we have this little QR code. And you can, and because all the product we make goes to third parties for testing for purity and C60 concentration. And also we have in there, we also have like this, our company that produces the C60, they do a certificate of analysis that shows that, it's 99.99% pure C60. And we have the same for our, all of our oils are 100% organic, farm source, so we know exactly where it's coming in. So you have real olive oil or real avocado oil, not cut with something else. And so that's just, so it's all, so we try to make the very best product. And we're not the only one that does this, but there are very few companies that do that. And you have to be careful. About 60% of the C60 companies out there are just BSing. They have no C60, low concentrations, low quality C60. And when the C60 industry was small, everybody in it made a quality product for their customers, right? It was just, a few thousand science nerds were using it. But once it became popular, all of these fly-by-nighters came in to make a quick buck. So the original companies are still great. We were one of those. And but, the fly-by-nighters. And for the ladies out there, even though I'm using it now, we have the new eye products that Jess, our CEO, she found her best favorite eye products. We have a anti-gravity serum for face serum. And we went to a formulator in Florida and we reverse engineered it and then put in a C60 base. So it has like all of those cool things that really help for facial things. So women just love it. They're making me use it, and actually it has got rid of lines and wrinkles for me. So I've become a guy, And then we also have a youthful renewal eye cream. It goes underneath the eyes, and it's got like the copper peptides and all of those other really good things that work to make the facial products.
Very cool.
So that's yeah.
You can check it out, guys, on the page there. Also, I wanted to ask you for dosage. A lot of people are saying, okay, well, with the gummies, does that go per weight? Does it go female, masculine? Let's say me. Take me as a test subject. I'm 235 pounds, big guy. How much should I be taking of the gummies? Is it 1 a day, 2 a day?
Probably about 2 a day. Okay. 2 a day in the morning. And C60, for some people, C60 is rather stimulating because it gets the mitochondria going. if you're one of those people that can drink coffee after dinner, don't worry about it. But I'm not one of those. No coffee after 12, right? So I tend to take it in the morning. So yeah, so you'd be 2 gummies or a tablespoon. Now, there's also a thing like if I was in my 20s.
So if you're a 120-pound woman, you'd take the 1 gummy instead. Like
well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, 120. And also, like if I was in my 20s or 30s, if like for the oils, I would probably take just a teaspoon or maybe a teaspoon or 2 teaspoons, right? But now that I'm not in my 30s, I'm over 60, 62 and something, and so I take like a tablespoon.
Right.
So as you get older, you know your production of antioxidants like SOD and catalase go down, so you need more. So basically, yeah, if I was in, I'm like 180 pounds, and so I would be doing a teaspoon or teaspoon and a half if I was in my 20s or 30s. Now that I'm I'm doing like a tablespoon and a tablespoon and a half. It's just as you get older, your antioxidant levels go down, so you need more C60 to make up for that. It's just kind of one of those things that goes with aging. So if you're, yeah, we have actually a calculator on our website. So but you know, you basically double up if you're older. That's all.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much. Again, we're already at the hour mark. I love the gummies here too. We have a year supply. Sarah and I have been taking this for a number of years, and we keep replenishing when we can. So you heard it from Ken. There's plenty available stock if you guys are looking for the gummies, but they do tend to sell out pretty quick when we do these shows. So if you're looking at giving this a try, maybe don't wait too long here. You get the first one in. So you could do that, of course, at shopc60.com. You'll see the links here below this video as well, here on Rumble and also on YouTube. Ken, for our next show, anything else? First of all, a big thank you to all of you watching us in the chat. We had 1,200 live, I think, on Rumble, and another 1,200 or 1,300 or so here on YouTube and Twitter. So a great audience today. Please hit the like button if you like this video and share it. Anything else coming up on your radar in terms of new weird science that we're going to be discussing?
Oh yeah, well that's one thing I never even got today. The new gravitational mathematics.
Oh, cool.
I developed. That's actually, there was anyway, that's for a little teaser for the next show. Yeah, you
maybe we'll get Cliff High on and we'll talk about his anti-gravity RV. He wants to go fishing on Mars somewhere. So
yeah, you remember they had the 4 space probes that tried to land on the moon's pole?
Yeah.
Only one of them, the South Pole, only one of them actually succeeded in landing, and that was the Indian Chandrayaan 3. And they actually used these new gravitational formulations.
Oh, wow.
The other 3 countries that tried to send space probes there didn't use these math, and that's why they all crashed.
Huh.
So we could probably talk about that next time we're on. And yeah, so there's a new, I came up with these mathematical formulations, and they're like 3 magnitudes more accurate than Newton's. And if you want to land on the moon or Mars or anywhere else, you're going to have to use them, Elon.
Hey, I wanted to ask you something before we go. I saw this article earlier yesterday. Where was it? Okay, this one here on Shadow of Ezra. I don't know if you follow this, you know anything, but apparently there's this weird glitch or anomaly that's heading up here in Antarctica, and they're having to recalibrate all of their weather devices and understanding here.
I'm not sure what's going on there. That's kind of like near the South American South Atlantic anomaly. So yeah, it could be something. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what that is. It's there's a lot of times when if you're not careful. We've had all those big electric or storms from the sun.
Yeah, the coronal mass ejections.
Yeah, coronal mass ejections, and they've jacked with a lot of equipment. So you got to be careful. Is it actually something real, or is it your equipment just got fried by
a ghost effect of something else? Yeah.
So you have to be careful. Yeah, a lot of times instruments are sensitive and can easily be damaged by surges in energy.
Right. Guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget, here at 2 o'clock, we just started here the new Astro Review. These are the predictions for the month of June in terms of the astrology and the alignments there. This is with Meg Moonbeam. It's available here on Rumble. It's playing now, actually. And I believe at 4 p.m. Eastern today, yes, Meg, Janine, and myself are going to be on here again for the Summer of Madness. This is the Beyond the News Rumble edition. You don't want to miss that. A lot of weird stuff. We're going to be looking at some of the Cliff High's data. He did send me another email this morning. I asked him if I could share with the audience, and he said yes. So we're going to be looking into some weird stuff also here at the 4 o'clock show. And for all of you interested in forecasting the crypto, gold, and silver for the month of June here. The Beyond Crypto Woo is going to be recorded at 1 p.m. Eastern here on Friday for the Insider Access Pass members, and it'll be available there for pay-per-view soon after. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us. This was our first edition here of Weird Science with Mr. Ken Schwartz. I love you guys. We'll see you soon, and au revoir.